Hi, Brandon Monroe here, and you're listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Well, I think it's safe to say we have a lot to unpack, good, bad, and in my case, some luggage as well. I'm Brandon Monroe, alongside me, Mark Chavez, and we're here to break down everything that happened at Martinsville. Of course, as we mentioned on the last podcast, I was there, so got a lot of great views from all the good and I guess the somewhat disappointing would be a accurate statement in terms of the cup race. Um, but let's start it all the way back on Thursday night with the Truck Series. Mark, what's some of your takeaways from that event?
Well, I think the era of Kyle Busch domination in the Truck Series, for better or for worse, certainly seems to be over. That's my biggest takeaway of it. Good win for William Byron coming back into the series. Only ran a couple races since he finished up his full time season there, and also, I mean, great run for Johnny Sauter. First race back in a Thor Sport truck this year, and was just super solid all day, despite starting, I believe it was 36.
Yeah, 36. He was at the back of the pack, had no
Shotgun on the
practice.
field.
And that was the best run he's had in years.
Yeah, for sure. And just a good performance for him. Hopefully he gets some more starts in that truck. I think he mentioned Texas is the next one he's currently targeting.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that as a whole, that race really pretty quiet for Martinsville standards. We did see a lot of beating and banging. I know Haley Deegan had a little disagreement, I guess you could say, with Lawless Allen after the end of the race. But outside of that, for a Truck Series race where these guys are known for really getting into it and knocking each other's doors off, it's a pretty calm race.
I mean, got to run the last 36 laps without a caution, which once you can get a couple laps there, it tends to build into a little bit longer of a run, and then they did manage to finish without a green white checker. So it was pretty tame. Still had quite a few cautions, but was still pretty tame, at least from a damage standpoint.
I know, just taking a look here at the results. I know Kyle Busch, as you were saying, days of him possibly dominating the series, at least for the time being, like you mentioned, maybe over. Only led one lap all night. I mean, that's three races for him now. He's finished in the top five in each of them, but only 63 laps led out of a total of 380 laps run. Obviously, no wins. It's a big change from what you see with Kyle. Normally, he gets a couple wins. Since he started running only 5 races a year in the Truck Series, which looks like started in 18 is when they adjusted that number down to 5. The least amount of races he's won is 2. He's going to have to win his next 2 starts, whenever those are, if he even wants to match that. So definitely seems like times are changing for Kyle in that KBM truck.
I mean, yeah, he's if he doesn't win the next two races, he is setting up to win the fewest races since he went winless in 2012. Obviously, in some of those years, he had some more starts
Hmm.
than the five with 11 and 13, 10 and 14, and 7 and 17. But I mean, 13 and 14, he won 5 and 7 races. So if he doesn't win one of his next two starts, it'll certainly be the worst season from a winning perspective. But even from his laps led, usually Kyle goes out, winds up bleeding a bunch of laps, even if he doesn't always walk away with the win. So far this year, he's only led 63. William Byron, I think, is actually our lap leader in the Truck Series right now.
Really, that's that's pretty crazy. Since he really, I think that was the only race he's won
That is the
run so far this
only
year.
race he's run so far this year. Yes.
But
Yeah, 94 laps is our laps leader. And actually, our second place guy is John Hunter with 85. Zane Smith rounds out the top three with 84. So Kyle currently sitting fifth on this list, and usually at the beginning of the year he's at the top of the list, if not the top
mhm,
person. So it's certainly been a bit of a, and it's weird because the KBM trucks themselves certainly seem faster than they were as an organization than compared to last year. Last year, obviously, John Hunter had a lot of speed to start out with, and was the reason that Kyle only won the two races that he won. I'm pretty sure at least two of the other starts, if not all three, the guy that beat him was John Hunter.
Mhm.
Um, so certainly, just my thing. I feel like the competition is just at the top is just better. I don't even know if it's necessarily Kyle taking a step back, because I think a lot of these, the top of the series is pretty dang good right now.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, William Byron, I know it was a Spire truck, but he does run for
Fire
Hendrick. Yeah,
getting
I know their first win in the
their
Truck
first
Series.
win.
I kind of wish that they ran all the races, because they did miss one, and that takes them out of owner playoff contention for the owners championship. So that's a little disappointing there, but a good run for them. William Byron, since he drives for Hendrick Motorsports in the Cup
Actually,
Series, not too much of a surprise, I guess, that he knows how to get around Martinsville.
Spires actually missed two, by the
They
way.
missed two races, all
Yeah,
right. Yeah, but still,
I mean,
regardless, it's
could be sitting here with
yeah,
two wins if Alex
yeah,
Bowman's bonsai move had
paid off at
paid
Coda.
off.
hmm But yeah, that's I know when they announced that team, I thought they were going to be full time, and I don't know if just what they were going for didn't materialize. Obviously, they've only done 3 of the 5 races, so a little bit disappointing. Would have been cool to see them possibly, put themselves in the spot for the owners' championship, but unfortunately, not the case there. Again, real quiet for a Truck Series race. Anything else you'd want to add on to it?
Yeah, I mean, even usually this is the kind of track you expect to see someone up near the front that you're not used to seeing, but even that was pretty standard. I mean, obviously not used to seeing William Byron or Johnny Sauter at the front this year, but in the equipment they're in, I mean, the Spire equipment clearly is pretty good. And then Johnny Sauter's being in the Thor Sport truck, like it's not that shocking. I mean, I feel like the first guy that's on the list that isn't like a playoff contending guy is, I mean, I guess again Kligerman, but he's usually a normal guy, so
Yeah,
probably Colby Howard in 18th with McAnally is probably the lowest guy that is, or the highest up guy that isn't a guy you normally expect to see near the front. But
Mhm.
with this and with some struggles that some of the guys have, the playoffs we still have I think it's like 13 races to go, maybe actually less than that,
Like 12.
12 I think.
Well, yeah.
But it goes by quick in the truck series. And sitting where we're at right now, it's gotten real tight from 9th to 13th. And 10 guys get in. Crafton right now in after his run. But he's only 7 points clear of Grant Infinger in 13th. De Benedetto, as we mentioned, with his struggles and it didn't have a good finish. Finished in like I think around 15th, which is not what's going to get you in the truck series. Has now slid, and he is looks like 25 back of the cut line. And then sure, if he were to go out, win both stages, and you can close that gap real quickly, but I mean, it's just hard to imagine that team being able to put that run together.
Right.
So we're probably outside of a win, which I mean, certainly we still go to. They go to Atlanta again.
I don't believe they do actually. I think it, let's pull up the schedule here real quick. No, they don't go to Atlanta again. Next
So,
race is Bristol Dirt, so I
I mean,
mean,
that's
anything can happen there.
who knows what'll happen there,
Yeah,
and
we don't.
we go to
It's going to be a
Sonoma
different layout
again this
too.
year.
Mhm. Trying to
I
think. I
think
mean, the closest thing that they probably go to like a super speedway is maybe Texas, and that really just comes down to the way the trucks trim out. Obviously, it's not
yeah.
going to be a plate race like Atlanta, but that's probably the closest place. Doesn't look like they go to Michigan again this year, so yeah, I don't really see a lot of openings for a crazy winner except maybe Bristol
Is
Dirt
Pocono
or
their last race
Knoxville.
before the cut line?
I think so. I think IRP starts the playoffs. Yes, yeah, it does. So
So
Pocono's the last
they'll go to
race.
Knoxville again.
Hmm.
Knoxville uh,
Hmm.
in June.
Yeah.
They have a couple road courses with Sonoma in Mid Ohio where you could maybe see a guy like not Knoxville necessarily, but at those road courses, a guy like DiBenedetto pull something out. But outside of that, like I think you're looking at, unless one of those guys manages to get to win, those guys that are in the top 13 in points are likely going to be your 10 of your 13 guys that get through.
That's going to be fun. I mean, just having those people kind of battle it out, especially if it stays tight. Maybe some people slide back and make it even a little bit more interesting. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I think the truck series here, as we go into late spring and the summer, are going to have a pretty fun run when it comes to filling out the field for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Majeski and Tanner Gray are only about 25 points clear of the cut line right now. So it only takes one bad race for them to immediately be
Mhm.
on that line. So
Right. So that pretty much wraps up the truck race. Unless you want to get into just the picks right now, or
no, we'll do all that at the
we'll
end.
do all that at the end. All right. So we'll go
Yeah,
over
it
the
was a
picks
little bit of a weird
and
week
everything.
anyway with
Yes.
you having to leave early and
Yeah, I couldn't
even
really
just
get everything in.
the truck race being on Thursday just
Yeah.
kind of makes it weird in terms of when DraftKings and the like release their odds. So
Yeah. So we'll go over all the fantasy and the pick stuff here at the end. Let's move on to the Xfinity race. Um, the best race of the weekend. Lots of action, a lot of interesting things going on, including story time with Dale Jr. under the red flag. That was great, having the scanner on him and just listening to him bring up a story about NASCAR from over a decade ago. Drivers don't forget. That's your takeaway from that. And also, I think we would agree that they don't always police maintaining your speed under yellow correctly, but it is what it is. Excuse me, Junior obviously not happy there with how he had to get through that big wreck at the end of the race. But let's set up the whole race itself. This was shaping up to be basically a Ty Gibbs runaway, it felt like. And then, as we all know in racing, cautions breed cautions, and it brought forth probably one of the more memorable moments at track, especially in the Xfinity series, since they haven't gone there that often over the past, couple decades or so. And honestly, I think at the end of the year, if people want to say this was the most exciting or, just try to think of the words, the biggest moment of the year, I guess. I bet a lot of people would agree. But Ty Gibbs, let's talk about him. We mentioned it on the podcast last week. I believe it was after the Richmond episode when he moved John Hunter out of the way. How would he respond to adversity? How would he respond when he had something like this happen to him? And it happened. And I think we would all agree that he did not pass the test in this case.
he responded like a immature child.
That's that is the, I guess, appropriate way to put it.
Brandon
Yes.
Jones mainly. And he what to be fair, it doesn't necessarily seem like he was mad at Brandon Jones, but Sam Mayer makes a move to go for second. They're racing for $100,000. Like
Hmm.
they're not just sitting there twiddling their thumbs racing for second. But short track racing, window opens up. He gets a bump. Landon Castle shoves it in there. They get a 3 wide. And unfortunately for Ty Gibbs, he loses out on 6, 7 spots, depending, or I guess 5 or 6 spots,
Yeah.
depending on where he would have finished. But that happens. I don't expect Ty Gibbs to get out of the car and be happy for sure. But as they're on the cool down lap, rams Sam Mayer. Uh, they almost about wrecks him. They get out of the car. Sam Mayer gets out of the car. It doesn't look like he has any intention of going and getting in Ty Gibbs' face. Just gonna let it go. Takes off his helmet, and Ty Gibbs jumps out of his car, runs over to Sam Mayer, and gets in his face and starts yelling at him. Sam Mayer calls him a jackass, and Ty Gibbs doesn't like that. Goes back, and they get back in each other's face, and then Ty Gibbs starts taking some swings. And I'm sorry, but if you have your helmet on, the other guy doesn't have your helmet on, and you start taking some swings, people are going to call you some words you're probably not going to appreciate.
Yeah, everybody in the stands was. Can confirm, definitely the loudest I've been, at least for an Xfinity race that I've heard it. Um, Honestly, just the atmosphere and everything going on, it was probably more insane than the Chase and Denny incident there in 2017, which is the other race weekend I was at Martinsville. Um, that was something else. You know, when the crowd starts breaking out the Ty Gibbs sucks chants, you definitely are gonna have a very hard time winning him back over, and I don't think he's gonna do that anytime soon, if at all.
Ty Gibbs sucks is a lot nicer than the things the internet was saying about him.
It,
I'll
it,
tell you that much.
it was also a lot nicer than some of the other stuff they were saying after the fact when he did his interview. So, um, it was crazy. That's really all I got to say about that. Is that was one of the crazier moments I've ever seen at a racetrack. I will say I'm with you and Ty Gibbs. There's one thing that you probably should not do in a post-race altercation. It's get into a fight with your helmet on. I
Listen,
guess
both drivers have their helmet on. It's whatever. If a guy comes to you and is trying to fight you and you don't want to fight him and you leave your helmet on, I also think that's fair. But when you go and get in another guy's face and then are the one that starts throwing punches and you have your helmet on, you are certainly not an adult.
oh, in this case he is just a kid, so that does. I think that's pretty accurate, at least. I guess
I
the
mean,
other
the
thing
thing is,
is
so is Sam Mayer, and Sam Mayer handled that a
he
lot more
handled.
responsibly and
Yes,
maturely than Ty Gibbs did.
I would say the only thing that I remember in terms of just like racing, like in NASCAR, and just somebody, or the fans turning on a driver this quick, it was already trending that way. He got booed a
I mean,
lot in
I
race
wouldn't.
intros.
I was. I mean, he was never a fan favorite to
Oh,
begin with.
he was never a fan favorite, but
He, from the beginning, has had all the ingredients you need to be the most hated driver in the in the NASCAR period. You
like
have you have the. I mean, Austin Dillon, who by and large seems like a fairly nice person, uh, is hated because people would still hate him if he was successful. People act like they hate him because he just isn't in his ride, but a lot of times, if the fan base already has a reason to dislike you, and then you win, it does not mean that they start liking you more.
right.
Uh
I think what I was getting at though is like this kind of felt like Ty Gibbs' point of no return moment. This kind of felt like when Kyle Busch spun Dale Jr. at Richmond in 2008, where like after that, there's no coming back from that. You are the heel, and you could either embrace it like Kyle has, or we'll see what Ty does. In his case, I hope he does kind of embrace it, because he's gonna have a rough time if he lets this type of thing get to him. And I think last night, while it was trending that way, you're 100% right. Just because of who he is, the opportunities he's had, because of who his grandfather is, it was already going this way. But I don't think there's any way he comes back after what happened on that race during that race Friday night.
yeah, I mean, he was already gonna be the most hated guy in the sport, and now he's. I I don't know if it was on the podcast or just in us talking, but I had mentioned how like Kyle is hated, but Kyle has a lot of fans,
Right.
so it really balances each other out. In terms of actual like level of net disapproval in the Cup Series, it's probably someone like Denny or Joey that has like the most actual like negative opinion. I think there's a good chance that Ty Gibbs completely blows that out of the water. At least in their career so far, there have been reasons to like Joey, reasons to like Denny. Uh, they have personalities that are good in times. They also not good in other times, but especially when they get in it with each other, things shine through that make you
Yes.
go like I kind of like that guy.
It's short track racing.
There has been nothing about Ty Gibbs, I feel, that makes people like him. When you are in the position you're in because of who you were born into, And the first thing you do in every single interview is thank God. It already rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Then, when like the focal point of your character you're trying to build for yourself is God, you face the slightest bit of adversity and start throwing punches.
You had a good look.
It really kind of makes the whole God shtick feel like a bunch of BS.
Yeah, that's. I want to say that's harsh, but I'd agree. I mean, that's not something that you feel like he should be doing. I wonder if his grandfather had to talk about him,
It feels like
about
another
that
one
with
of
him.
those people that try to use God as their escape every time they do something wrong and act inappropriately, and then they just talk about begging God for forgiveness. And I mean, I've mentioned it before. I think God don't give a crap about your race. Like he has more important things to take care of. You got lucky, and that's fine. I'm not gonna. He doesn't deserve to automatically be hated just because he got lucky in life. And most of these guys in any of these series at this point, in any kind of competitive ride, have got lucky. But he's gonna get hate for it. It's just the nature of it. But then you go and you act just like a complete clown. And I still don't really have a problem with what he did at Richmond. You're gonna make a move on someone, you make sure they can't make the move back. But then he goes, gets bumped out of the way in a race he already lost, and starts throwing punches. He is, if this is the temperament he's gonna continue to have, he is gonna get put through the meat grinder in the Cup Series.
Oh, I agree with that 100%, especially depending on some of the drivers that are still there. Like, if he races long enough, like, stuff like that's not going to fly with someone like Kevin Harvick. Now, Ty Gibbs might be lucky enough where he doesn't have to deal with Kevin Harvick by the time he gets to the Cup Series. But it's drivers like that. I think Joey Logano, maybe a Brad Keselowski, there's going to be guys that aren't going to put up with it. I think he's probably a little bit lucky because some of the guys that might dish it out to him just as hard are his teammates.
Yeah, Joey
Same.
Logano's pretty young, and Joey Logano is
Yeah, Joey Logano's going to be there for a while, so he's gonna have to deal with Joey a lot. But
And that's
that's
the thing, though, if drivers know this is the way you're gonna act, they're gonna do it to you on purpose.
oh yeah.
Like they're certainly not gonna be afraid of Ty Gibbs.
But what I was going to say too is, like, I think we feel similarly about this driver I'm going to bring up. Like, is Ty Gibbs just the way he acts and his attitude? I think this is a fair conversation to say at the moment, or have at the moment. Um, is this like a Carl Edwards level of like fakeness, where they try to give off this personality, and then when they get into certain situations, it's like they flip a switch and it's just
Um,
the complete opposite.
it feels different because I feel like in a lot of Carl's interviews, he didn't even come off as necessarily like my point is that Carl, based on the stories we know, Carl, I don't know if he seems more fake, but he's at least better at being fake. Because Carl in his interviews, a lot of times you would still walk away being like, no, that guy seems fine. And a lot of the stuff that we hear about him is there are some video clips of it, obviously. But a lot of the other talk is talk that rumors that have just leaked out from drivers, or things drivers have just come out and said. Whereas, like, even in Ty Gibbs' interviews, he just feels swarmy.
Could just be, maybe it has to do with him being a kid, but we'll see there. I think the other thing we also have to bring up about this whole situation is Joe Gibbs' reaction. Have you ever seen an owner just not care at all that their driver won the race? Because at the end of the day, Brandon Jones did win the race. That's a Joe Gibbs racing car, and Joe Gibbs looked like he could give less than two craps about what just happened.
Well, I mean, it certainly cements anybody that thought or tried to pretend that Ty wasn't going to get the best equipment. I think it at least, helps solidify that maybe the equipment is equal, it's fair, but we know who Joe's rooting for.
Hmm.
It's funny because I was actually earlier in that race. At one point, Truex is running really good. Uh, Gibbs is obviously dominating, and Brandon Jones was way further back in the back half of the top 20, back in like the 15-ish area. And I was wondering, man, I wonder if it's time to start talking about how he's just not performing up to the standards of the other cars. Other than Phoenix, he's been like pretty clearly the third guy there, and then he went out and won the race. So
Yeah, I mean, it's his
even if Grandpappy didn't want him to,
yeah, that's his first win in about a year and a half since Darlington in 2020. So much needed for Brandon Jones. He's had a very interesting
another
career of ups and downs, I guess you could say.
another win that was
I
had
mean,
some contact at the end.
you
Not
you
with
look
him,
you look
but
at a lot of these wins that Brandon Jones has had. I mean, the Darlington one, obviously, that was with Ross and Denny. I know the Kansas race in 2020 that he won. I think that was like a green-white checker, and he ended up getting by, I believe, Cindric at the end. And then, obviously, the first race that he won in
didn't.
2019. Hmm? Oh, what are
No,
you
go
gonna
ahead.
say?
Go ahead. No,
I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say that race at Kansas in 2019 was the race where I'm trying to remember who it was. I want to say it was Garrett
Lester.
Smithley. No, I think it was the one with
Oh,
Garrett Smithley when he wrecked Chase Briscoe and Christopher Bell when they were
Bell.
lapping him.
Oh, so, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Brandon Jones in a lot of these races, he's kind of come out of nowhere. The Phoenix race he won in 2020, he pretty much beat Kyle Busch, if I remember correctly. That was really the one win where, like, you look at it and you go, man, he really, really got up in the wheel and drove it. I guess Martinsville, he did do that too. It took a lot to get around Ty Gibbs, and he did win a stage. Granted, he got up there because of strategy, but he was able to hold everything down and race his way back to the front after that stage, and big win for him. And that's going to do a lot comes playoff time too. I mean, that's 6 playoff points he got from that race. So, pretty solid day in terms of racking up playoff points comes the fall.
I mean, I think Brandon Jones is who he is. I don't think there's really anybody out there clamoring for him to get a shot in the Cup Series. Probably a good amount of people that thinks he shouldn't even have this shot in the Xfinity Series, but he wins races. He comes with some sponsorship, so
I mean, he's got 5 wins, so
yeah.
it's not like a Ryan Reed situation where he won Daytona twice. Like, Brandon Jones has won at a bunch of different tracks, and even though he's gotten lucky in some of these races, he's put himself in a position where he could take advantage of it. So
I
I
also
mhm,
just
yeah,
real quick want to
yeah.
say for Brandon Jones, he certainly in that last turn, and maybe had to because of how close the field was behind him. Certainly raced Gibbs a lot cleaner than Gibbs deserved to be raced because he didn't in that last turn make contact with him at all.
Yeah.
Gibbs just got caught by Mayer and got a little high on the track, maybe trying to make a run. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I mean, it looked like he just kind of cooked the turn trying to really get back up into it. But that's racing, and I still can't believe everything in the aftermath and stuff that happened. That was just a wild race. Some other things to talk about in the Xfinity race. Obviously, Dale Jr. was back, as we mentioned before. Had some story time with him under the red flag, which that was a huge pileup. Jr. just kind of squeaking through it after he got spun out by, I guess, Josh Berry, who Jr. spun out before, kind of tire down, which led to him spin out. So interesting day there between the boss man and his de facto son, that some people would say. But you know, Dale ran solid. Probably about a top 10 car. Ended up finishing 11th even after the issues he had. But it was really good to see him back out there on the track. Parker Retzlaff, another pretty solid run. Ended up finishing 12th. I know maybe not the most popular driver. There's a lot of people that like the kid, and there's a lot of people that have some things to say about him just because of his iRacing background. A lot of maybe the older fan base not huge fans of these kids that get started on computers, as Rick Allen would like to put it. But he's been pretty impressive in those seed cars.
yeah, no, he certainly ran really well again this week. So, but I mean,
Yeah,
the C cars also just are definitely better this year than they were last year.
unless Natalie Decker is in the car.
Well, Natalie Decker is terrible. She's terrible. She's
uh,
just terrible. There's not terrible.
okay, Charles.
Just
But
terrible.
she's bad. Like, that was. I mean, I was talking to some people at the track, and they took Kyle Sieg out of the car for Natalie Decker, and from my understanding is the amount of money she's bringing in with the Busch Light sponsorship deal that they're doing with the female racers this year.
Mm.
Um, it's a significant amount of funding from what I was told. So it's one of those things where it's unfortunate for Kyle, but if you could get that money for one race, and it could be 5, 6, 7 races of funding normally for that team, that's just too big of a check not to accept.
Oh no, for sure. And I'm sure Kyle understands. I'm sure he wasn't thrilled about it, but he already wasn't playoff eligible.
Hmm.
So it's not like it matters a great ton. Um, and it gives them more money. Like, listen, the money comes, I get it. It's just I'll give her this. I don't think she caused any cautions. Uh,
She did spin out by herself trying to avoid a yellow, which was comical. I still don't
but
know
she
how
didn't
she managed
cause
to
the
do that.
caution.
She didn't cause the caution, but she did make me laugh. So
And with how slow she was, that is pretty decent. But I mean, C cars. This was a track that historically Ryan Sieg had not done very well at. I don't even know if he had a. I mean, they've only ran here a
couple
handful of
times, yeah.
times,
Mhm.
so it's not like there's a ton of history here. But before this race, he finished 11th in the first race in 2020, but then last year, which again, the cars were pretty bad. Uh, First race being the first race back at Martinsville, not
Right, right.
now there were two Martinsville races in 2020, but last year finished 23rd and 31st, but then did finish ninth uh this past Friday. I mean, he's just sitting right now, has an average finish of 13th, and his career high in average finish came in 2019 at a 14.6. And that does include one DNF in these first 8 races. So it's not even like he's just up there because he's finished every race. Now they have yet to have like top 5 speed, but in every single other race that every race they've been able to finish, so every race but Vegas, they finished ninth, 10th, 8th, ninth, 10th, or 11th.
Yeah, that's solid.
They've been very consistent, and that's the kind of consistency that will likely put them in the playoffs. Right now, Landon Castle jumped up a couple spots, really good run, kind of run he needed. Currently is the cut guy in 12th. Ryan Sieg currently sitting, looks like 26 points over the cut line. So not a comfortable margin, but I mean, if he continues to run ninth, 10th every week, he should be fine.
Yeah.
Austin Hill, who it doesn't really matter his relationship to the cut line, but has slid back, is currently sitting 10th in points right now. Riley Herbst in 11th is up 11 on the cut line. But then, like, it's from Landon Castle to Anthony Alfredo in 13th is a 15-point drop, and then another 12 points to Brandon Brown. And then I think the one right now that's the most surprising one is Sheldon Creed, 39 points out of the cut line right now.
Yeah, he was turning it around in the race on Friday, and then he had something go wrong. I don't know if it was a penalty or a mechanical failure or what, but that ultimately dropped him to 30th when it looked like he was probably going to run, I don't know, somewhere around 10th to 15th at the end of that race. Not a great day by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot better than 30th. And he really cannot afford days like that.
Oh, I mean his when you're 15th in points, but not even just 15 points, but already 39 points back, any kind of cushion is long gone.
Yeah, he's got time because there are,
He's got time.
obviously a lot
There's
of races in the
still,
Xfinity series. Yeah.
let's see, they would run 25 races, so still 17 races left.
Mhm.
But I mean, when he finishes, it's usually a decent finish. Part of the problem, I'm sure, I haven't looked too much into it, but I'm sure they don't seem to be up at the front at the beginning of races, which certainly hurts your stage points. But uh,
Right.
in their first 5 races, they had the crash in Fontana, but then Their worst finish was 14th at Phoenix. But then the last two races, which either are short tracks, we're not going back to another short track like this until the playoffs, I guess. Actually, Bristol actually have more
Like
races.
Bristol's a cut race.
They have 2 rounds.
Yeah, so Bristol would be their cut race. That's the last race of the regular season again.
So they will have to go to a short track in Bristol. Do they go back to Richmond?
Does not look like it. No. No, they do not. I think the trucks go back when the Cup Series goes back in like August.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There must be some race of theirs that I'm forgetting then. But they so they actually have even more races than that because then they would go. They have well, I guess they have 33 on the season this year.
Yeah. So their playoffs is Texas, Talladega, the Roval in the first round, and then Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville in the second round, and then Phoenix.
So yeah, about
So
like 17 races left.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be he just if this is a short track issue, then they'll be fine. They don't even have to go to the pretend short track of Bristol, being this Bristol,
The
since it's
Bristol.
covered in
Yeah,
covered in
dirt.
dirt. They don't even have to worry about that. So, but he has to certainly can't have any more finishes like this.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he's had some issues. He had some more again this weekend. But I mean, I think Moffitt being last of the our motorsports guys and continues to be last is also pretty surprising. I feel like from what most people expected. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Anthony Alfredo being the first one. Like I know that he had that good finish at Fontana because of tire strategy, but it still kept the car pretty clean and ran in those teens positions in all the races other than Phoenix, where they didn't even get started until they were already 40 laps down. So
Yeah, I mean that Moffitt kind of dealt with an issue like that, on Friday night.
mhm.
They had a drive shaft issue, only completed 13 laps, and he qualified sixth. So that's very unfortunate for him, because I think a lot of people thought he would be the highest guy on that team. Um, could have maybe had a top 10, maybe a top 5 run, never got the chance. So very unfortunate there. Rough points day for him. Well behind the cut line now. So he has a lot of work to do. And in all honesty,
He
if he
probably
wants to
needs
make
a
the
win,
playoffs, probably needs a win. Yep. Um,
which was probably true anyway. I don't know that that's changed that much,
but now it's like a
but now
definite.
it's
Yeah.
certain.
Yeah. He's going to have to win a race to get in.
Because you
Um,
figure right now, right, we're sitting 12 drivers in the playoffs. Obviously, that doesn't change, but like Ryan Sieg's the only guy in there that I think a lot of people would look at and maybe didn't have him in there to start the season, but they've ran real good this year. And you do have Sheldon Creed, who's sitting out, that I think a lot of people had penciled in.
yeah.
So it's always for our motorsports guys. It always kind of felt like they'd have to get a win, and then just for Sheldon Creed, it's basically a certain by now.
You mean Moffat?
Or sorry, yeah, Brett
Yeah.
Moffitt.
Although if Sheldon Creed doesn't pick it up, he might be back there
Yeah,
with
that's true.
Moffat.
That's true.
He is definitely has to turn it around when they get back out on the track. Any final thoughts from the Xfinity race?
Someday I will be right when I keep proclaiming that Sam Mayer wins. Another strong run for him. Uh, he'll get it. I'm very confident he'll get it. But
I almost feel like I should just keep putting $100 on him because
I mean,
some of these races he shows up,
when
he's like
he's
plus
when
2,000.
he's
So
plus 2,000, like with the speed that we've seen from him, I think even if it hasn't hit yet, but you hit once, you're still up 1,500
yeah, I
or
mean, if
so on
I'm,
the year. So
I was gonna say if I'm out $2,000 at the end of the year, it's one of those that might just be so be it
because
because
as
it
long
makes
as he
sense
keeps
to do
being
it.
at plus 2,000, it's a bet I'm going to keep liking because he's been in contention. They just need a little bit more little things to go their way, and they'll get it.
I would I would agree with that. Very close. Might have to wear some sunglasses for a week or so to cover up after his little fight with Ty Gibbs, but I'm with you. I think he's going to be in victory lane relatively soon. So let's go on over to the Cup race now. Last night, it was not good. I guess would be the best way to put it. I think a lot of people were expecting a lot with these cars, with how good the racing has been at a lot of the tracks this year. Um, I think the one good
It
thing,
was bad. Don't
well,
man, it was
well,
bad.
it was bad, but when I say one good thing, I'm not talking about the race itself.
Well, no, I
Uh,
just you wanted
yeah,
to say it was not good. I'm just saying
yeah,
it
it was
was
bad.
bad.
Um, the one good thing about it is I don't necessarily think, there was one factor that made it the way it was. It
Sure.
definitely seems like there was a lot of different variables, and
The
hopefully when we come back here in the fall, it's going to be different.
the counter of that is if it was one variable, I feel like there'd be a lot more confidence that they know what to do. Even the drivers can't necessarily agree with what to do about it. Austin Dillon thinks there isn't an issue at all, and it was just the cold weather, which is certainly true. When it gets
Mhm.
that cold, it's really hard for the track to take in rubber. Uh, it makes the tires last a lot longer, and that was certainly something that played an effect.
Also, doesn't
Joy,
help that any rubber that was there got washed off the track before the
yeah,
race when it rained. Yeah.
Joey thinks that maybe just a new tire is what they need. And there's been some talk about how the tires on these next gen cars on the left sides just wear very, very slowly. And there have been some drivers that have been pushing more and more just to get softer and softer left side tires just to try to get them to wear more. Um, yeah, it was Ryan Blaney who said that they just don't wear on the car
Mhm.
and he wants them to go way softer. He also mentioned it was pretty frustrating when you're so much faster than the guy, you run him down from several seconds back, but then you get to the car and you just can't make a move. Um, I mean, you saw it with Cole Custer. We had some discussion about this beforehand, but Cole Custer runs top five until he winds up back in the 20s. Finishes 21st last car in lead lap. Does go a lap down at one point. And there was some talk of, well, maybe that's where Cole Custer's car actually was. Maybe he actually had a 20th place car. And if that's fine, that's true, that's fine. But you shouldn't have been able to so easily, without any issue, run in the top five of the first two stages if he actually had a 20th place car. People should have been able to get past him, but no one could. We saw it with Bubba when he was getting lapped. Like he was just fast enough that he didn't. It wasn't like he was throwing these crazy blocks to keep them behind him for the most part.
Mhm.
He just kind of was racing, and they couldn't even get to him to move him out of the way.
AJ Allmendinger was another one like that, where I felt like if he could get his laps back, because he had to start with a pit pass through, because they didn't get through tech. But when they were chasing him down a couple times, it felt like man, if he could get back up there, he might have a decent car. And they struggled passing him. I know that was one of the tough lap cars. There were a couple guys obviously that were really like that. Denny Hamlin put up a fight a couple times. Even Ty Dillon, who was, he finished 23rd, 2 laps down. It looked like William Byron was struggling a little bit to get by him at the end of the race before that last yellow. So there is something going on there. I just don't think it's a cut and dry thing like you saw with the Gen 6 cars when they ran the 550 package here, where it
Well,
was
then
like,
let's just pretend it is and say we need more horsepower and a smaller spoiler and just have them do that.
I mean,
Listen, I ain't gonna
I
say
think
no.
I think the horsepower. I mean, again, it's something a lot of people look past. There's less horsepower on these short tracks, and I'm not saying that is
Then there
the
was
reason.
last year.
Than last year,
Yeah,
yes,
you're
right,
right.
yes. Then last year, yes, it's the same as everywhere else other than the plate tracks. But compared to last year on the short tracks, they do have less horsepower. Um, I think that possibly could play a role in it. I would probably, being at the race and just watching it, I think the temperatures and possibly the tires are more of a role, but I'm not going to say no to more horsepower. It's not a ton more. I mean, we're talking, like 725, 750. It's less than 100. Maybe that's what they need. Of course, if I knew for sure, I'd probably be working on a race team and not doing this podcast. So take that for what it's worth. But there's a lot of little things they could probably change. Obviously, they can't do some of them, but hopefully they can figure something out. I think I felt this way, with the schedule moving races around. I think if you want Martinsville to stay a night race, you probably have to move it at least, late spring, early summer at this
I
point,
mean,
because if it is a weather thing, you got to have it warmer.
to me, the allure of a night race was almost always like you can't really race during the day because it's so dang hot, so we'll have it at night.
Hmm.
And so it felt weird to have like this. And I think I got lost because I don't know I don't remember if in 2020 it was supposed to be a night race for the spring race, but it was a night race for the what ended up being the summer race
Yeah, because of COVID. Yeah,
because
I
of
think it
COVID.
was
So
supposed to be a night
it
race.
got delayed. So I don't think it
Yeah,
necessarily caught a lot of attention there because it was just so late in the season.
and that race was really weird. Like
The
there was a
race
lot of
was
strange stuff
very
going
very
on.
strange. But and then just like it just I I don't think night races should be this early in the season. You get too it's from basically from you all that were there and then from everyone else that's talked about it. Like it was my
It snowed.
takeaway that was borderline miserable.
It snowed. It was
Uh,
sleeting and snowing before the cup race when it started raining. It was not just rain. Not it wasn't as noticeable as say Las Vegas, but there it was very crazy. It's the first race I've been at where something like that's happened. I've been to a lot of races, most of them in New Hampshire where it is cold when they had the fall race there. I've never seen anything like that. I'd say Thursday wasn't bad, and even Friday, that brief shower that went through again wasn't awful. But last night for the cup race, that was cold. It was cold.
um, yeah, I mean, Junior, he always is not afraid to share his opinion on on Twitter, mostly just because that's. I mean, he does it on a download too, but Twitter always captures his immediate thoughts. And I mean, before the race even started, he did talk about not liking that they have to shift, um, which is fair. Funny enough, Joey Meyer, the former, I don't remember what he used to do. He worked with
I think it was a
Harvick
spotter.
somehow,
I feel like it was a
or
spotter.
Brad somebody.
Yeah.
But he was Junior retweeted him, and he did mention this. Coda 69 laps, they shifted 22 times a lap, which just with some quick rounding math, winds up being 60, 70 times 20, so like 1,400 times.
Hmm.
Martinsville, you shift 4 times a lap at 400 laps, which is 1,600 times.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, I am not. There are some people that seem to be opposed to shifting on any kind of oval, and I'm not. But these you should not have to shift to Martinsville. I do think that is it makes the racing not even necessarily harder, more taxing for sure, but it also like allows you then to have if it makes it to where you can shift, you have so much acceleration up off the turns
Hmm.
and through the turns, and that is something else that Junior also mentioned as potentially being why you just could not really even get to them in the turns. He mentioned the independent rear suspension being another potential reason, just allowing so much grip there. A lot of people have talked about the tires being wider, and I mean that's inevitable. Kaz Gralla mentioned, this is some of what happens when everyone wants the cars to be closer.
Hmm.
Is it also inevitably means that it does sometimes get harder to pass.
Yeah.
And
No,
all that is
that's
true, and
fair.
that makes sense. My biggest issue is just that, like, you could not really even bump them out of the way. Like, it was hard for them to even really get to them for the most part, unless they were super aggressive going into the turn.
Yeah, I saw some people move him out of the way. The only one that really got shot out of the way was when Logano made a move on Chase. But as you mentioned when we were talking before, that pretty much happened because Chase got into the guy in front of him, and it stacked him up and allowed Logano to move him out of the way. Outside of that, saw a couple people put bumpers on guys, but
Yeah, because I talked about it
nothing
after the
crazy.
clash. At the
Right.
clash, they weren't moving them out of the way as well, but they were pretty much slamming into each other every single turn.
Hmm.
I know the broadcast didn't show a real good job of doing that because it was kind of focused on the leaders, which I think is kind of it was weird just because the track was so small. It wouldn't have been that hard to have a more zoomed out camera, to be honest. But at an exhibition race like that, I really only the winner matters, so that's fine, I guess. But I was there, and they were slamming into each other every single turn, like an accordion, bump, bump, bump every time. And occasionally a guy would get moved out of the way, but they're also going slow enough that it was easier, I feel like, for them to keep it under control. But here, just from what we saw, and it sounds like even kind of what you saw in the stands too, they just weren't really even getting to each other, which is just not. I mean, there's something that needs to be changed. I don't. The they should have. I feel like they kind of took the short tracks for granted in their testing. I know they tested at them a couple times, but it was always the much smaller test sessions. I think Phoenix was the smallest one that they had like a proper test session at, where they had like basically everybody there. I guess half, because usually had like 2 cars per big organization, 2 cars per 2 drivers, basically.
Mhm.
I don't think they did that at Richmond or Martinsville. I know they didn't do it at Bristol. Um, so it's just, and Gluck tweeted about this too, and I could see this happening. Is if this does right now are two outside of Atlanta, because perceptions of Atlanta are weird, mostly just because of how it was. A lot of people didn't want it to be that way. Um, I think if you remove that one for sure, pretty universally, the two most disliked races this year have been the two short tracks.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I was gonna say that like the gap to Richmond, while it was probably the worst race of the year leading up to what we had last night, it wasn't a terrible race. It was different. There was
certainly,
strategy made it good.
in my opinion, and I believe in your opinion as well, was not worse than the old Richmond.
No, it was if
At
anything the
bare
same.
minimum, it was.
Yeah,
I think it was a little bit better, but it was
I
at
do
bare
too.
minimum the same, which
Hmm.
is fine. I don't expect this car to make the racing better everywhere, but Martinsville was worse, and there's a plethora of factors in it. And the unfortunate and borderline scary thing is, I don't think NASCAR is going to do anything about it, because it's not, unless they like, if all, maybe the gear ratios change,
That's really the only thing they could probably fix
because
right now.
other
Yeah.
than that, there's other stuff they can do. But the problem is, we don't get to another short track until Richmond, shortly before the playoffs. And Richmond was borderline fine. And I don't know that they'll go too crazy with any changes. But is this really the race that, with how it ran, the race that we want to be the cutoff race before the Final Four?
Yeah, at this point, no. I will say some of the stages and
And
stuff
that
like.
race
Uh,
is late October. It could, I'm not, maybe not
no,
40
it'll
degrees cold, but it could be
it,
cold.
it can be cold. I I think the one thing there is I do feel like drivers last night were a little more lenient with each other. I think stage 1 and 2, William Byron might have been able to get up there, and if Chase Elliott wasn't his teammate, maybe he would have pushed a little harder. Maybe he would have moved him out of the way if he could get there, because that was an issue. I think, and obviously this is something where I don't know how you fix this, but the stage lengths too. I think if these stages were about 20, 30 laps longer in some cases, maybe if we didn't shorten the race,
Well, I
um,
don't know that that would have.
Joey, Joey and Blaney were coming, on those stages. I know nobody was going to catch William Byron probably at the end of the race in stage 3, but if these, I feel like they would have been there. They could have been actually making moves, because the way they were able to chop into Chase and Byron at the end of stage
I
2,
mean,
they were catching
I,
them. I would have
at least
liked to
from
see if they
at
could have
least
done
from on the
something.
TV too, though, like they raced, like the leaders get less aggressive when we're getting to the end of the stage if there's no one right behind them, and if they had to find their way through traffic a little bit more because they know they're another, 50 laps, I guess if we had a 400 500 lap race, you could do uh 150, 150, 200,
Mhm.
or even 125, 125, 250. But either way,
I
Uh, and they might have
would
gotten to him, and then they might have passed him, but there was still so little passing happening everywhere that.
I would have liked to see it. I wasn't a fan of them dropping the laps, and obviously we had Haley
I
Deegan on Twitter. Did you see that? Her talking
Yeah,
about
yeah. Well,
like
well.
the
First,
race laps.
I don't know that the lap changes makes a big difference here.
Hmm.
Uh, I part, not to go too conspiracy theorists, but for a race that had been pretty popular, dropping it 100 laps out of nowhere seemed pretty crazy.
Mhm.
Maybe they knew something like this could happen,
Maybe.
and they knew that if we had to go through another 100 laps of that, Twitter would have, it's the
Yeah,
biggest place where you can read NASCAR opinions. I know it's not the real world, but it would have been quite up in arms.
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And
Although it was
the
a
race,
relatively quick race.
the race would have then become 400 miles anyway, 400
Laps.
laps anyway.
Yeah, for sometimes there's some days I wish Martinsville was 400 miles.
I mean,
Last night was about one.
it was a quick race, but I think to me, outside of like the Coke 600, and again, there are some races that I think just leave at 500 miles, like Daytona and the 500 and the Southern 500. But like to me, the goal should be able to be to complete the race in under 3 hours. Um, because there's a lot of talk about at the track experience for the fans, and I get that that's important, but it's something that I don't think NASCAR cares a terribly ton about, because I think that's why Phoenix was allowed to reduce their seating capacity as they were and still get awarded the championship race. And I certainly don't think they should be as short as Haley Deegan is saying.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Is I think she's absolutely ridiculous for saying they should be half the length. Like, people aren't gonna go to these races. Now, if you stack cup races with like an Xfinity or a truck race on the same day, then maybe hey, I get 2 races for the price of one. People might go out to that,
It
but
only
not
works on
everybody
Saturdays.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. But
You
like,
can't do that on Sundays.
I mean, some people think you can. I'm with you. I don't think you can, but some people are going to think that. And my counter to that is I don't think people value the Xfinity and the Truck Series as much as the Cup Series. I think it's a fair
No,
thing to
that's
say.
100% true, but just
Yeah,
you can't have. When do you run it? Like super early on? Like it doesn't make any
right.
sense.
Like when are you going to do it? You'd have to run like the
That's my
first race at like
that's my
noon, and then the other
problem
one at
with
like
the Easter
5.
race on Sunday
Mm-hmm.
is that in the real world, most people still work on Monday.
Yeah,
So you're having a Sunday an Easter race, which I already think is not a great idea, to be honest. But then you have it Sunday night. Like if I'm obviously not in the area, but if I was 2 hours away and I had planned to go to that race or went to it the year before, it's almost an automatic no.
that's the other thing too with the shorter races. Like, I flew down. I know some of the friends I met up with down there drove down. Are you going to drive 12 hours for a 200 lap Cup race at Martinsville? Hell no,
No.
no, no. So I'm
I think
sorry, Haley Deegan, but you're an idiot for thinking they should be that short. That's just my opinion on
I
that.
don't ever step into the Martins because my thing's always less no track no race needs to be 500 miles, and I'll stand by that. I don't
I,
touch
I've come around to that.
I don't touch
Yeah,
Martinsville or Bristol. I don't get involved in that part of the discussion. I do think the target ideally should. Now, obviously, there are things like cautions and stuff that you just can't help, and obviously, rain delays are ignored by this too because it's not
right.
even counted in the race time most of the
Yeah.
time anyway, as long as they red flag it. But I get this race is being shorter. I mean, I've made this argument, especially with plate tracks, for a while. Like, I
I
legitimately
used to
think
love
it's
them being 500, but Talladega does not need to be 500
with the way
miles
these
anymore.
races are now,
Yeah.
legitimately, a 200-mile race is going to wind up almost the same result.
Yeah, I
They
can't go that far down, but
No,
400.
I'm not
No,
advocating
yeah,
for it. I'm just
right,
saying I
right.
don't know that in terms of the actual product, it changes it that much.
Hmm.
There's you get to it like they get real racy after the stage or right as you get up to the stage, and they
And then
get
they
racy
wreck.
at the end, and then they wreck sometimes, and then they get racy at the end. But most of the time, like you get that first like 3/4 of the stage slash even or gets the final stage. So this is the first 3/4 of the stage. Like they kind of just are there. They'll be 2 files sometimes, but they're not being super risky or racy because it's not worth it, and I don't blame them for it.
Yeah, no,
So
I would agree.
I don't think we need the 100 miles at Dega or
I,
the other. Well, I mean we don't have it at the other Daytona race, but
I mean, like, just going through some of these races, both Atlantis, if we could keep going there twice a year, 400 miles. We do that Atlanta race. was like pulling teeth watching it. It would not end. I know there was a lot of wrecks, but that was too long.
Well,
And I normally like those long races, and even I had a
it's funny because
problem with it.
I've long been on the Atlanta. Once they switched Pocono, Fontana, I don't remember if they switched Michigan at the same time.
Mhm.
Those races were better when they were shorter.
Yeah, yeah, because that's right. The
Straight up,
Michigan doubleheader, the COVID year, they were like 300 miles,
and
350, like it
then,
was
it's
shorter.
a little bit different once you
Yeah,
get the like. I don't think any of the intermediates should 400 is probably the good number. I
I would
think.
agree. I would agree.
Um, but you run into the Atlanta race, which uh didn't have a ridiculous number of cautions. Like it had, it had 11, but 11's not
Yeah.
ridiculous.
hmm
And it took almost 4 hours to finish.
Yeah, it's too long. Too,
Um, so it's just I do think some of them could be shorter. I don't think they should be half though. I think
yeah,
that's a
I think
mistake.
half's ridiculous. It's ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, like if you make them half two, what are you going to make the truck in the Xfinity races? Are we going to keep them the same so your Premier Series is equal amount to your minor league series? Or are we going to drop them to like 100 laps at a track like Martinsville? It just you can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm with you at the bigger tracks. We don't need a lot of 500-mile races anymore. Um, I know, like I've said before already, I used to be on that. It was like an endurance thing back in the day when it was like, are the cars going to last? You had reason for it to be that long. But nowadays, people have other things to do. You probably got to shorten them. Atlanta doesn't need to be 500 miles. Texas doesn't need to be 500 miles. Um, there's probably more that I'm just forgetting off the top of my head. Those are the two that really come to mind real quick. And I definitely agree on that, but
Well,
going as far as what Haley Deegan said, it's too
oh no,
much.
what Haley Deegan said is
Yeah,
just too much. So, no, that's
yeah,
what's funny. I don't have a problem with 400 laps on the Martinsville race because this
yeah,
race went fast for sure, but it also had even proportionally a far fewer number of cautions.
yeah.
Like last year's the races before this, the Martinsville races before this, uh 3 hours and 42 minutes, 3 hours and 54 minutes, 3 hours and 40 minutes. The first race in 2020 was a bit shorter, 3 hours 23 minutes,
Mhm.
3 hours 30 minutes. Uh, and it just it can get long, and I don't think she's wrong in the reasoning. I don't. People F1's race length with long term is going to have something to do with why people keep watching. The race last night was not an entertaining race. Verstappen was the only person that could even touch Leclerc, and his car broke, and it was
Oh,
over.
we're talking about F1?
Yeah, well, no,
No,
because that's the
uh,
biggest reasoning people talk about shortening the races.
right.
Is that F1 is growing in what is the prime demographics of 18 to 49 or whatever.
I think that has nothing to do with the race lengths. That might be what keeps people entertained, but it's
That's
100% because of Drive to
No, that's what I'm
Survive.
saying. Is
Yeah.
I don't think it has nothing to do with it. 'Cause there are people that try to
Mm.
argue that people keep watching has no. I think it has something to do with being able to keep people watching it. But I don't think it's I don't think they go, oh, this race is shorter and they're going to watch it. But when you turn in to watch it and you watch a 2 hour race that is moderately exciting, or a 4 hour race, 3.5 hour race that is moderately exciting, you're gonna probably watch the 2 hour one more often because at that point there's probably other things you'd rather do.
Yeah. That very well is the case. I mean, I know a lot
And
of like the hardcore NASCAR fans love the Xfinity and the Truck Series, and they are shorter. But I think just having kids
well, I mean,
down there that don't use their heads
why
helps in
else
terms of the
does
entertainment.
I myself have argued in the truck series. I think part of what makes it the way it is because they just got to go.
Yeah.
There is no waiting.
hmm
You just go. So I am very concerned, and I think I will. There's nothing that could, unless they change something, which I don't think they really will. They could change the tire compound. We would almost never know because they talk about it very little. Uh, but I'm concerned for the cutoff race before the championship four.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
we'll we'll
we
see when we get there.
right now the poll's not closed yet officially. But right now, Gluck's poll is sitting at 18% thought Martinsville was a good race. Uh, by comparison, right now Richmond is the lowest one of the year's races at 63.1% thought it was a good race.
Like, I was there freezing my ass off, so I might have more of a reason to vote no than normally. Um, I've seen a lot worse races than that.
Sure, but
I think a lot of people are feeling the way they are because Martinsville is
I mean
normally
that a
a
good
great
race at
track, right?
Martinsville is or okay race at Martinsville is still usually better than a good race at a lot of places.
I think a lot of people are just pissed off with what
And
last night
I
was.
mean, I yeah, this right now is on track to be bottom three all time in Gluck's poll.
That's
The only three races he doesn't have the percentage for earlier on, uh, so this could change. But right now, Indy in 2016 is sitting at 17%, and the Charlotte All Star Race in 2017 is sitting at 18%. Funny enough, both of those won by Kyle Busch.
yeah,
There
yeah, they
has been
were.
some flight analysis. You could never prove it. It's not like you can rerun the same race and just change the winner.
Hmm.
But some analysis has shown that races that guys like Kyle Busch, Truex, Hamlin win are more likely to have lower ratings. But William Byron's a popular driver on the most popular team, and he won. And I don't. Do I think 18% is deserving compared to some of these other races? Probably not. But I mean, it's definitely by far the worst race of the year.
Yeah.
Like he
Um,
doesn't have, and I'm sure he'll probably put out. He doesn't have it easily to sort by what tracks, um, the average of the tracks. But this is, I'd be interested to know what the worst at Martinsville before this was.
all right. So, before we get into our, just going over our picks from the weekend, I just do want to touch up on William Byron since he did win the race. He's off to the best start of his career. He's already gone over most laps led in the season. We're already 8 races in. Um, I think last year when he won Homestead at the beginning of the year, you thought maybe he was gonna have that jump, and he did show it at the end of the year. Um, Speed wise, but couldn't close anything out. So far this year, I mean, not only has he won multiple races for the first time in his career, he's led at least one lap in all but one race. The one race he didn't lead a lap in was Coda. He's gone over 100 laps led now in 3 races, including 212 last night. I know that could very well be because of the circumstances, how hard it was to pass, but he still probably had the best car, and he just drove away from everyone. Is this maybe the beginning of William Byron starting to get on that roll? Like I said, I know we talked about it last year. We thought it was going to happen. It didn't. He's got 2 wins, 8 races into the season. Looks really good. Is this going to be it? Are we going to start seeing William Byron start to roll off a bunch of wins here?
I mean, Chase's breakout season was when he was 24.
Hmm.
William Byron is currently 24. I believe the year in which Kyle Busch, the '08, I believe he was 24. May have been 23. I don't remember for sure.
Hmm.
And he's had the talent. They've had the speed, maybe not dominating speed, but they've had good speed. And I mean, I'm all signs are pointing to, yeah, like the 24 and the 9 have had a lot of speed. The 48 and the 5 have had a little bit less speed, but still been decent to good. I mean, better than most of the JGR, or all the JGR cars, really, other than maybe
Hmm.
Kyle Busch. Better than the SHR cars. Like we've had the newer guys in terms of them being competitive, Chastain and Briscoe and Reddick be up there. But I mean, all the Hendrick cars still have speed, and William Byron and Rudy Fugle have been a great pairing. Already had his best year last year. Didn't the end of last year, especially, ended it very, very strong.
Mhm.
So I mean, this certainly, I mean, it should be it. I feel like two wins already, and could, couple lap difference, could have three.
Yeah. Yeah.
He got certainly didn't have the best car last week, but they had the strategy that almost worked out.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's good. Like William Byron. I've met him a couple times. Pretty solid dude. Real nice. Pretty down to earth. I gotta say too. I got a picture of it. I wish I had a better camera on me,
Kyle,
but it was
Kyle
it
was
was
actually 23 when he had his
ah,
best.
close enough. Close enough. He did win 4 races when he was 24. He
He did
just
win.
happened to miss the
He
playoffs.
did win 4 races. He did win 4 races.
But with William Byron, I mean, it's cool seeing the 24 car up front. It was even cooler seeing it side by side with the 3 car.
Well, they were
that
never.
was a
They were
throwback.
only side by side on like
It
the
was
restart.
like a
But
restart, yes, but you get what I'm saying. It was pretty cool. Just
for
seeing them both those
all
car
the
numbers up there.
people that like to talk so highly about Tyler Reddick and talk about Austin Dillon like he is a pile of crap. Austin Dillon is only 5 points behind Tyler Reddick in the standings.
Yeah, he had
And
a
sure,
great run
Reddick's
last
had
night.
some issues, but so has Austin Dillon.
Hmm.
So, do I still think at the end of the day, Reddick winds up winning more races in his career? Yeah. Like, Reddick is the better racer. Austin Dillon is not this scrub that people like to talk about, admit, like he is. Currently sitting in the playoff spot. Currently up 10 points on Kurt Busch for that next playoff spot. So, certainly has some speed. The Chevys this year have just been very, very good.
They have
If
been.
if Chase if Allen could just strategize a race, like he is, I don't know if you notice on being there, but before they had that green flag pit stop, obviously you knew he fell from second to fifth.
Are
But
you
he
talking
was
about when they came back in and took
no,
tires
no, no. Before that,
for that? All right.
before the green flag pit stop, they fall from second to fifth, and I don't remember who the first car was to pit. I feel like it was like Truex or Kyle Busch or somebody.
Mhm.
Uh and Chase is like clearly losing speed to the leaders.
Could have called them in immediately.
And he rode out another 5, 6, 7 laps. It's the most. It's like they have a plan, and even though all the things in the world tell them they should change their plan,
They
they
just go.
refuse to change their plan.
They stick with the script. There's no
I
improvising there on his part.
I'm not gonna say I hate the call to pit. Cost them a couple spots, but I mean they were not gonna win the race from there. It was too
Mhm.
hard to pass. The idea was clearly pit, run 25, 30 laps, hope a caution comes out, and then everyone else goes down pit road.
Mhm.
Uh, that was clearly the hope. It probably, even if caution came out, probably wasn't going to happen. But I got the strategy behind it. I did not get the strategy behind keeping him out another 6, 7 laps after the first car comes down pit road when they are clearly losing a ton of time.
Yeah,
And they've
I
done
get it.
similar things before. The strategy call at Richmond took what was probably his best Richmond car that they had was at worst like a 7th place car, probably a 5th place car, and they finished 15th with it. If it's not Allen's calls, it's the pit crew on a key stop.
Yeah.
Like the pit crew lost them the lead again on pit road.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the race. Yeah,
And
that was the race.
was Byron's car better? Sure, but with how hard it was to pass, I'm not going to say it was impossible for Chase to hang
To
on
stay
there
out
and
there.
win. So it's just I don't think Allen needs to. They bring fast cars every week. Like they have a lot of speed, especially in the beginning of the race, and it's not even usually that bad at the end of the race. Outside of Vegas, they've had probably a top 5 car at every single track, a winning car sometimes, but they just someone else needs to be in charge of strategy, man. It's driving me crazy.
I mean, I know with Junior, they had somebody up there that did a lot of the strategizing when Steve Letarte was there. Most notably, the Pocono race, the second Pocono race in 2014. You have that quick yellow on a restart, kind of gets you to a spot where you make some pit calls. And, I remember, I think it was Junior telling the story, or maybe Steve, where they were like, I don't know if it's going to work. And the strategist was like, no, it's going to work. We're going to short pit here to get us to the end. And ultimately was able to cycle through, get him out front, and he won the race. So it's not uncommon to have somebody else up there making strategy calls to work with the crew chief. And I'm with you. Maybe if the 9 team doesn't have that, they might need somebody up there, because
It
it is
it's not
something.
a new
Always
thing.
something.
This is a consistent thing.
Mhm.
I still don't even hold as much grudge against him for Charlotte in the 600 in 2020, because
It
if
wasn't gonna
everyone
be
else
there.
pits,
Yeah.
they do lose that race. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't even like, it was a tough call to be in, and I would not envy being in his position. But other than, there have been so many times where they have a great car and just make the wrong call.
Hmm.
Like, he's really good at setting up the car, and then at the track, just their strategy just almost never works.
It's always something. Um, One last driver I definitely want to talk about, because we've been talking about him in previous episodes. Kurt Busch, solid night. Looked like he had a top 5 car. Lost some spots on the last restart, but yet again, not a lot of stage points. Looks like he only got 1 in stage 1, none in stage 2. So even though he ran up front for most of the night, he is still currently out of the playoffs.
I mean, it was something we mentioned before. When you need the stage points. It's just it's very very hard to make it without the stage points. He did gain 2 spots this weekend, but is currently sitting at 10 stage points. The next lowest driver that is, or the of all the drivers in the top 20, Chris Buescher actually has fewer with 4. Other than that, the next fewest is actually Austin Dillon with 18. And someone
Hmm.
like William Byron has 82. William Byron has over a race of stage points alone on Kurt
Yeah,
Busch.
yeah. That.
And it's going to be immensely hard for him to make the playoffs if they like keep doing this. Right now he's 10 points back, which is not a lot, but that's also equal to the total amount of stage points that he has this year. Uh,
And we were talking about Austin Dillon. He didn't get a lot, last night either. But it looks like he got, I want to say 4, maybe 5. Eh,
I mean
That's more than Kurt.
that's more than Kurt.
Yeah, that's more than
If he
Kurt.
got 5, that's half of what Kurt's got all year.
Looks like he got 5. If
So,
I'm counting
but
this
to be
right. Yeah,
fair, before that that means that Austin Dillon only had 13 himself.
true.
But I mean that is low, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you remove Cindric has 19, Dillon has 18, Kurt Busch has 10. You go all the way up to 26 with Eric Almirola for the next lowest. Now Eric Almirola currently making it work, sitting with 26 stage points, but moved up 3 spots, and now 8th in points. So it's just it's it's going to be hard for Kurt to make it if they don't start getting stage points. But someone else that this is not the kind of finish they needed. They certainly have enough speed as a team to get there. But Daniel Suarez, terrible night for him. Finishes
Yeah,
29th, slides 4 spots back, and is now sitting outside of the playoffs by 18 points. And
yeah,
another bad night for Denny Hamlin, but it doesn't matter because he won the race.
yeah.
So,
We don't need to talk about Denny Hamlin struggling until the playoffs. Um,
like I
Keep
said,
it with Trackhouse though.
I
Oh,
didn't
what were
think
you
it
gonna say?
was. I didn't think Denny Hamlin's win was some magical remedy that was going to get them to
No.
run good, and they finished absolutely pitiful at one of his better tracks. So
Yeah, that was a very rough night for him. Keeping with Trackhouse, Ross Chastain. I don't think I noticed him one night until he
I
came
don't think
across the
anybody
line
did.
5th. Yeah, he showed up there. I'm looking at the end of the race, and I'm watching like the board. I'm like, man, Ross Chastain finished 5th. No idea where he came from, but listen, it's saying a lot. What they did, that's what championship caliber teams do, where you don't notice them, and at the end of the day, they're right up there at the end of the race. Obviously, he's not in a situation that Kurt Busch is, where he needs stage points because he does have a win. I mean, Ross is racing for playoff seeding right now. He's currently 5th in
Fifth.
points.
He's currently 5th in
That's
points.
what would that be like?
I don't, not going to pretend to
6.
remember.
I think it's 6 playoff points with the seeding.
That's a
How it works
win.
at the end. That's
A
more than a
win
win.
and one stage win.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, he's got stuff to race for. He's 42 points out of the points lead right now. Not too far behind Joey Logano for fourth. So I mean, there's a lot there for Ross. Obviously, you're gonna want stage points to keep up there in that top spot, or in the top end of the points. But he's got a lot to race for, and to come back
But
after no one noticed him all night, that's a good
and
run.
I don't think it's a coincidence that our top 3 guys are also the 3 guys that have the most stage points.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, on the season, Ryan Blaney has more stage points than Chase still, but despite finishing 6 spots behind Ryan Blaney on the racetrack, Chase Elliott now point leader by 3 points
Yeah.
when they were previously tied. So you need the stage points. It's great. If you can get a win, then great. You don't have to worry about them. You want to get the stage wins, obviously. Like at this point, right? Like I don't think Denny Hamlin really cares about stages all that much unless he can win the stage. Uh, I feel like, based on how he's ran, unlikely he'll run up into the top 10.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, we might be sitting here and he won that race. Everyone felt like, all right, it's Denny Hamlin right back at it. But we might be sitting here based off of this Martinsville run come Daytona going, man, Denny Hamlin got really, really lucky that he won. I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
luck. They had a great strategy call, but he's
Oh,
very
he's
fortunate
it
that
worked out.
it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about Austin Cindric a couple weeks ago. Like, is he going to be the guy that is taking up a playoff spot? He's kind of rebounded. I think he's 14th in
It's
points right
14th in
now.
points.
Yeah,
He's up
Denny
and down.
Hamlin is the one that right now, unless they turn it around, we're going to be looking back at Daytona going, man, he stole one from someone. So they definitely have a lot of work to do, but luckily for them, they have time to figure it out. Well, you got the picks. We could jump right into that to wrap
Yeah,
this up.
pretty straightforward. No one picked William Byron to win the truck race.
Yeah.
I did pick Zane Smith, and who had a good run going. He had some issues
I know they had an
with it.
interesting strategy call there at the
Yeah,
end to
yeah.
pit. That cost him a bit.
You picked Kyle, who finished top 5 still. We both had Tanner Gray as a good odds favorite, and he ran decent. Had some issues, for sure. Ran okay. My pick to win for the Xfinity race was Sam Mayer, and I was close again, and I'll keep being close until it happens. You picked Dale Jr. because you tried to wish it into existence.
He finished 11th. That's double ones.
That is true.
It's
It is true. You're not wrong there. For value, I had Sam Mayer, but also Ryan Truex, who ran pretty decent. You again had Dale Jr. because you again trying to just will it into existence.
once a year, got to do it.
And I don't blame you. For
Yeah,
the Cup race, you had Kyle Busch both as their pick to win and your betting favorite. I had Ryan Blaney as both of those, and Blaney ran strong. Didn't have a race winning car. Certainly, these were also picks we made before practice or qualifying. I would have. I don't know who I would have gone with, but it probably wouldn't have been Ryan Blaney.
I probably would have
Uh,
went with Chase after qualifying. That car
so
looked good,
for
and it
our head
was.
to head, actually did pretty good in head to head this week. We both picked Chase to beat Denny, which happened. We
Hmm.
both picked Byron to beat Truex, which obviously happened. We both picked Blaney to beat Chastain, which did happen, albeit by only 1 spot. But then Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson. You picked Kyle Larson. I picked Kyle Busch. And
Yeah,
this is the first
Larson
time
disappointing.
all these picks were made after practice and qualifying, so these weren't necessarily as early as the other ones, but first time one of us has all year gotten all 4 right. And
Man,
that
should
was
have.
me.
That's good. I'll clap it up. Clap it up for Marky. But hey, no, that's always good. I should probably actually bet these individually, but I could be dumb when it comes to actually betting. I will say, did save my Saturday night. I did pick Kurt Busch, top Toyota on DraftKings. That won me a couple $100. So the one bright spot in a pretty rough weekend. I know fantasy wise, I had some excitement on Friday night with the Xfinity race, where in about a matter of 20 laps, because they kept wrecking, we went from losing like $10 to winning about $300 back to losing about $10. So it was a wild ride there. That huge pileup on the restart with Sam Mayer getting bumped into Noah Gregson definitely ruined my day there. But it was fun. I enjoyed the ride. That's what I got to say about that, at least.
Yeah, I won a little bit on the weekend, so it was a good weekend.
Hey, that's always good. It's never a bad thing when you win. But
That's true. That's true.
I think that's gonna wrap it up for tonight's episode. Another long one. Had a lot to talk about. Bristol Dirt coming up next week. We'll have a preview for that later on in the week. It's gonna be interesting. Only been there once. You can only talk about so much. So we might try to throw some other things in there to keep you guys entertained. But until that comes out, just keep listening, and we'll be back later on in the week. So stick around, and we'll see you guys then. Brandon Monroe here. Thanks for listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Remember to keep listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform. And remember to follow us at Bernie Breakdown on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all of our other social media platforms.